My name is Monica Wilkinson Kelly. I'm the archivist at the Edith B. Ford Memorial Library in Ovid, New York. Today's program is part of the Cayuga and Seneca Lakes Agriculture and Craft Beverage Memory Project. It's a 2-year oral history project with funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. This is our second roundtable discussion presented in conjunction with fingerlakes1.com. And I would like to thank all of our panelists who have taken time from their busy harvesting schedules to participate in this today. So let me introduce our guests. I have Chuck Tauk, founder and owner of Sheldrake Point Winery, located at 7448 County Road 153 in Ovid, New York. He's located on the western shore of Cayuga Lake. I have Dave Breeden, also of Sheldrake Point Winery. He is the winemaker at Sheldrake Point Winery. I have Case Staple, who is the vineyard manager at Boundary Breaks, located at 1568 Porter Covert Road in Lodi, New York. And he is on the eastern shore of Seneca Lake. And then I have Jeff Hauk, winemaker at Lucas Vineyards, located at 3862 County Road 150 in Interlake in New York. So welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Yeah, I hope you can all hear me. So I guess I'm going to start with Chuck. Can you just give me a brief history of Sheldrake Point Winery?
A brief history.
Very brief.
So Sheldrake Point has been here since 1997. This vineyard was started actually by a small group of enthusiasts who banded their resources and energies together to resurrect an old abandoned dairy farm into a vineyard and eventually a winery. Grapes started being planted in 97. Our first vintage with grapes from this site was made in 2000. And here we are in 2020. Credit is deserved by people like Dave Breeden, who's on the call, who's been with us since 2002 and has been integral to the development of the wine program. Dave Wyman, who's not on the call, our vineyard manager, has been here since 1999. And is integral to the vineyard program. And even guys like Case Staple, who is on the call and works over at Boundary Breaks, but really cut his teeth here in the vineyard world with Dave Wyman. And then we lost him, but that's okay. That's part of history. We're proud to be part of this collective group of Ovid-centric wineries and hope to be here for many years to come.
Okay, so do you recall just briefly what your first vintage, how many cases you produced when you had your first vintage at Sheldrake Point Winery?
I didn't come prepared with that number, so I'm going to take a stab at 250.
Okay.
Just a wild guess.
Okay, so moving on to Dave Breeden, how many cases are produced currently at Sheldrake Point Winery?
So last year and then again this year, we're at about 6,500 cases for us and that same amount for Custom Crush and alternating proprietorship clients.
Okay. And so, Case, can you tell us a little about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. As Chuck said, long family friends with the Tauks and everybody at Sheldrake over there, and just a wonderful establishment. And I was lucky enough to cut my teeth, as Chuck said, out there under the guidance of David Wyman, who's just one of the best viticulturists in this area. And he, went out of his way to show me the ins and outs of grape growing, which he did not have to do. He could have just told me what to do and sent me off to do my task, but instead he explained everything very well to me. And he said, I'm going to teach you how to do this too well, and you're going to leave me. And he was accurate. So in 2010, I joined Bruce Murray over here at Boundary Breaks. We had 6 acres of Riesling planted, and we planted another 6 that year. And then I still worked for Sheldrake 3 days a week over here until the following year when I was full-time over here.
Okay, and so our last person to speak about the history is Jeff from Lucas Vineyards. Can you tell us about the vineyards briefly and your history?
Sure. We first planted our vineyards in 1977. First vintage was in 1980. My mother-in-law, Ruth Lucas, started the winery in 1980. And production has varied over the years. It's currently around 17,000 cases. And yeah, it's been an interesting ride. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary. And of course, 2020 has been an interesting year to celebrate. And but things are ending very nicely with this harvest.
So how many acres of vineyards do you have currently?
So we have 32 acres of vineyard, and we do use some purchased fruit for a couple of wines.
Okay, and can you talk a little about the types of vines that are planted, the types of grapes that you have?
Sure, we're a pretty even mix between hybrids and vinifera grapes. We've got a beautiful Cabernet Franc vineyard, nice 3 different blocks of Riesling that produce some beautiful fruit. And I love those 2 varieties, working with them. And then also we do have Cayuga White, which is a versatile blending tool for us, Vignole, Sauvignon Blanc, and we have Gewürztraminer, Syrah, Cabernet Sauvignon. So we have a nice portfolio of grapes, and I do like the hybrids when we have a cool year where we have damage to the vines. Those vines help sustain the winery by keeping our production up.
Okay, and so Dave Breeden, can you give me a estimate of how many tons, is it fair to say, of grapes you've harvested at Sheldrake this year?
We're at about 205 with probably 56 left to go, something like that. And just to correct what Chuck said earlier, our first year production was 784 cases rather than 250. I looked it up while we were.
784. Okay, so now can you elaborate on the types of grapes that you're growing at Sheldrake Point Winery?
Sure. We have 10 varietals, 2 of which don't matter. Well, no, 1 of which doesn't matter because it's so little. Our largest plantings are in Cabernet Franc and Riesling. So we also have significant plantings of Pinot Gris and Gamay Noir, and much smaller plantings of Gewürztraminer, Muscat, Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Merlot. I think that was 9. Oh, and then there's a single row of Syrah. So that's 10. I hope that was all 10 of them.
Okay, so are the majority of the grapes harvested at this point in October?
They would not normally be. This year is the earliest year we've ever had, even earlier than 2016, which was also a droughty year. But yeah, we have probably 40 tons left out in our vineyard, and they will all be in by end of the day Saturday.
Okay. And so how many of the grapes are mechanically harvested versus hand-picked?
Again, it varies a lot depending on the year. This year, we had to pick at a time when it was not appropriate to machine pick because we needed the grapes to be cold and it was warm. So we picked, 40 to 50 tons of Cab Franc that would have been machine picked by hand instead so we could chill them. Total machine pick this year, probably 50, 60 tons out of 220, out of 200. So not very much.
Okay. And how many people are employed during the harvest season at Sheldrake Point?
Pretty much the same number that we have all year round. So there are 4 of us on the winery side. Then actually, that's not fair. 2 of those people are not normally in the winery. So 2 regular people in the winery, 2 harvest people. And then on the vineyard side, there are 7 people. 7 people.
Okay, so okay, it's the same sort of questions for you. What percentage of your grapes have been harvested at this point?
So we actually had an unfortunate event this year on June 3rd at about 12:15 in the morning. We got whacked by a really strong hailstorm. So, just putting a cap on 2020 real nice for us. So that did a significant amount of damage and probably cost us about 65% of our grapes. The silver lining being that it was early enough in the season where our secondary and tertiary shoots did grow and fill the canopy, meaning we're going to have, good canes to tie down for next year. But with that being said, we're harvesting right now, picking Riesling, but we've harvested about 25 tons of Riesling. We probably have about another 30 tons to go this year. We've picked some small amounts of Gewürztraminer and some Cabernet Franc and the Merlot that we have on site.
Now, I've asked people when I'm doing interviews, personal oral history intake interviews, and I'll ask, what is one of the greatest or the greatest natural predator and danger to the vineyard? And hail comes up often because you can have a tremendous year crop and then suddenly it's just destroyed in minutes, from what I understand.
Absolutely. I mean, hail would be number 2 for me, however, though, because a bad cold snap can just completely kill your vine. So, the hail allows the vine to regrow, whereas if you get a cold snap and it kills the graft union, that vineyard could be, 30% just eradicated from that cold. So hail would be number 2 for me.
And I have to say, for anyone interested, Boundary Breaks and Case has tremendous, great videos that really illustrate what goes on in the vineyard year round. You have, bud problems with buds and what happens if the buds, come out too early, if there's a break. So I really admire your work on the documentary, really. Well,
thank you so much. I'm just the subject for that experiment, but I'm happy to try to break it down into the simplest terms I can to just explain to somebody that has a base knowledge of viticulture, to just kind of lay it out for them.
So do you make the wines as well, or you have a winemaker, or?
So here at Boundary Breaks, we believed when we first started this business that the wine starts in the vineyard, and when you have a set amount of money, you can't just necessarily build a huge facility and all the vineyards and all the equipment you need. So we currently do not have a production facility, and we work with some of the best winemakers in the region, Mr. Breeden being one of the key players. And we have all of our fruit contract made out in their facilities to an agreed standard.
Okay, well, that's one thing that I really have heard a lot in doing the oral history project is the cooperation between so many of the wineries and vineyard managers and winery owners in this area, which seems to be extremely unique to.
I have limited experience in other, viticulture areas, but it's really a pleasure to be part of viticulture and winemaking in this region. Everybody works so great together. It's just great, working with so many good colleagues. And, if you need a favor, you'll get a favor. And if you have to give one, you're happy to give it. And it really is great to be part of it.
Okay, well, thank you. And moving on to Jeff. And I was asked the same question, what exactly is going on at Lucas Vineyards? How many tons of grapes have been harvested, and which wines are you currently working on?
So definitely, like everyone else, busy time in the cellar. We still have Cabernet Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon to pick, along with some Vidal, but we are looking to wrap up probably the end of this week. Just some gorgeous fruit. The red wines coming in at ripeness levels. I really don't think, it looks like we're going to exceed like numbers that we've ever had. So it's exciting. Now on the other side, like looking at predators and things that happen, I was in, we have 1 acre of Syrah. I was in that vineyard last Thursday, looked beautiful. Took a ride on Saturday, took a break from the tasting room, went for a ride, went down, and deer had probably eaten about half a ton of our Syrah in those 6 rows of Syrah that we had. So we quickly picked what we had left as quick as we could. And, but again, like it's not over until it's over. So hopefully they're not down there eating up my Cabernet Franc right now. But yeah, it's always a battle, but this has just been a truly wonderful harvest year. Like you pick things when you want to versus being forced to make picking decisions based on the weather. And yeah, we've had just some of the most beautiful fruit, and we've got some great fermentations going on. And we're very excited to see what we can make from these wines.
Okay, so I don't know if I asked you this. How many cases do you produce now at Lucas?
So it's around 17,000, but I mean that varies from year to year, and but that's probably the average over the last 5 years.
Well, what I'm hearing from so many producers, this has been a really great year, and you know, you think it's been very dry and really a drought at some point. Why would this be a great year for the vineyard if it's so dry and hot? Can you explain that?
Well, in general, grapevines are fairly deep rooted, and as long as you can get some timely rain at crucial periods and the vines don't break down and their canopy stays nice and green, and you get a beautiful development of fruit in your red wines, you're going to get more concentration, generally a little more color, and just a little more intensity in the fruit flavor. And you're also going to get a ripeness in the white wines too. There can be like a little trade-off with the white wines for me, like you're going to, you know, we could have lower acidity in some of our wines, and but possibly if we need to, we can manipulate that. But overall, we had pretty healthy canopies despite like a real dry season. And even taking a ride around our vineyards, vines that we've already picked like 3 weeks ago still look super healthy. And so, I mean, for whatever reason, like even though there's not a lot of water in the ground, the vines are holding up pretty well this season. So it's something and also we're seeing like the wood is getting itself ready for winter. It's hardening off nice, and I think that can help us too as we go into winter for next year's crop.
So Dave, the same question. What do you think has made this such a great year for grapes?
I mean, pretty much just echoing what Jeff said, right? Grapes are essentially little teeny paper bags of sugar outside. So if you rain on them, they tend to want to fall apart. And this year it didn't rain on them. So one of the biggest pressures influencing our pick dates is grape disease, grape rot. And this year that was just not a thing. Every single grape was healthy. I've never seen so many beautiful grapes across varietals. It was amazing. So yeah, the lack of rain was great. That caused some crop losses in some place because berries were smaller, but Sheldrake has a very, very, very wet site. So generally speaking, we didn't see those kind of crop losses. So it's sort of the best of both worlds. All the fruit we wanted, and none of it diseased.
Okay, Dave, I know you're very well known for the rosé. What can you describe the production of rosé wine at Sheldrake?
Sure. So our flagship product, half of our production is our dry rosé made from Cabernet Franc. Any normal year, we would not yet have started to pick that because it doesn't normally ripen until the 3rd or 4th week of October. This year, we picked it all by September 28th. It was really ripe, really early. And the sort of central technique to our dry rosé is an overnight cold soak, which requires cold. And because it was such a warm year, the grapes came in when it was not cold. So sort of going back to what I said earlier, rather than machine picking them and just cold soaking them in the press or in bins, we were forced to hand pick them, put them in a cold room, get them cold, and then crush and destemp, process them and cold soak them. So that was a lot of extra work on the vineyard crew. 44 tons picked by hand that would have been picked by machine. And it's not easy. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I think so. Case, it's really pouring rain out right now. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? Are you rushing to get what's out in and harvested, or just, do you stop picking? Do you stop working during the rain? Other than this video?
As these gentlemen have said, we've had such a good year that the disease pressure is so low that there's really no rush to get everything in. Just we got a little band of rain this morning, and we stopped picking for 45 minutes. We let them dry out for a little while, and then we're gonna get right back to it because we have the whole crew here, and the winemakers are ready to go on the crush pad. So there's no stopping the ball now. It's rolling.
And so, Jeff, what's left for you? What do you see the rest of October and November? What's going on at Lucas Vineyards and for the rest of the year?
So tons of fermentations going on. And of course, tomorrow we're going to pick Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc. I'm anticipating, like I said, some of the ripest fruit from our sampling we've ever had. So I'm excited to get that into the winery. I can't wait to get it off the vines and when we can start making wine from it, because I think, it's potentially could be like something that we could make some really great wine from. And then we will machine pick some Vidal probably late this week, and that'll wrap up our harvesting for the year. And then in the winery, it kind of is a lot of fermentations, racking the wines. Couple of times we have some barrel work to do where we're going to take reds out of barrels that were from last year and get those ready to bottle. And then we'll be getting red wine into barrels from this fall's harvest. So lots of stuff to do, but it's hard being involved in the winemaking to not have a little smile on your face when you're kind of seeing the fruit that we're bringing in this year. It's pretty exciting. So a lot of work, but we're going to be happy to do it.
Okay, well, thank you. Now, Chuck, somewhere you're there. I was curious, as the winery owner, this has been a really difficult year. Maybe it was a great season for grapes, but not a great season with COVID-19. How has Sheldrake Point Winery coped with that?
Yeah, 2020, there is the silver lining of fruit quality and harvest, and the revenue that productive vineyard can help to offset. Like most, I think all wineries in the Finger Lakes, we weren't open for business for 3 months in the spring. And even though spring can be a slower time for us, that rebounded, I think, into June and July as visitors slowly decided to head out and visit us. When I say us, I mean the entire region. I think August and September has proved quite busy for virtually all wineries, and we're seeing a lot of traffic, a lot of people who may not have otherwise chosen to come to this region. They may have gone on vacation to Italy and France and China or wherever else they might have flown to. And so there may be, even though it's been a slow year and revenues haven't been there, I think we're all enjoying this opportunity to make a wonderful impression on people who are coming here. The weather was great. People, I think, have returned home saying, wow, the Finger Lakes. I think people hopefully are returning home saying, wow, nice wines in the Finger Lakes. And I'd like to believe that in the years subsequent to this, we all enjoy some dividends. 2020 should prove to be a wonderfully high quality wine year for the whole region. And that just helps us all in the years ahead. We'll get through it. Unlike a lot of industries, we haven't been hurt as badly as others, especially in hospitality.
Okay. And Dave, do you have anything in closing you'd like to add in summary of what 2020 has been like for you, or as far as harvest and winemaking?
I'm sorry, Monica, who are you addressing?
I'm sorry, you. In closing, do you have anything to add? Some of the highlights, what you'd really like to close with as far as the 2020 harvest season at Sheldrake Point Winery?
I mean, it's getting a little repetitious, but grape-wise, it's been the best year I've ever seen. It really has. Just quantity and quality together in a way that was completely unexpected. Certainly in terms of quantity. I mean, so yeah, it was a great, was and continues to be. Again, we got 50 tons out yet. An absolutely amazing year.
Okay, and how many years again have you been?
I've been at Sheldrake since 2002, so 18 years.
18 years, okay. Well, that says a lot if this is the best year you've ever seen. So thank you for your time.
Sure, thank you.
Case, anything you'd like to add in closing?
I mean, as Dave just stated, just wonderful year for growing grapes. Things went nice and slow because of the temperature, so we had a chance to make a lot of improvements in the vineyard. And as Chuck stated, we built some new pavilions and got a bunch of tables and patios out when we were closed, anticipating reopening. And we've seen such a boom in foot traffic here and people being exposed to the Finger Lakes that might have never came here before, that I think it's actually been one of the bright sides of this pandemic. So it's nice to see people getting exposed to the Finger Lakes that just might not have come up here. So they're going to come back. It's a good thing.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Jeff, same question. Anything you'd like to add in closing?
I've pretty much just kind of gushed about the vintage, but I'll just talk about, doing business in the pandemic has been completely different. But like the others, we have tried to seize the opportunity to make some new friends. So I've seen tons of people from downstate, and many of them, especially when we reopened, had never been here. So like Chuck had said, I think we are seeing people who maybe never even had the Finger Lakes on their radar. And that could work out in the future as being a great thing, because we all know what a beautiful area we live in. And for those folks who have never had the opportunity to be here, I think it's pretty exciting that those people will come back and see us again.
Okay, congratulations on your 40th anniversary.
Thank you very much, Monica.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes this session, number 2, which is Harvest Roundup 2020. And I'd like to thank our guests, Dave Breeden from Sheldrake Point Winery, Chuck Taug from Sheldrake Point Winery, Keith Staple from Boundary Breaks, and Jeff Hauk from Lucas Vineyards in Interlake in New York. So thank you all for taking this time from your very busy harvest schedules to participate in this. I think it's really good and important that people realize how much work is involved in agriculture. And thank you so much, and good luck with the rest of the season.
Thanks so much, Monica.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, bye-bye.